Subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to get all the latest updates.
Hi everyone, my name is Hemant and I welcome you to the Inkpot Hub Media. Today we have with us a tech leader who chose to go for the PhD path after 1.5 decades of his high-paced tech career. So we welcome Mr. Rajesh Dhuddu, who is a blockchain, metaverse and cybersecurity leader with one of the Asia's largest tech giant, Tech Mahindra. He has got a respectable mention in Forbes Blockchain 50 for 2 consecutive years, 2021 and 22. A lifelong learner with degrees in management at UG and PG level, a PMP certified manager, and with an executive exposure from the Columbia Business School. He is one fast paced leader that we are very keen to interview and you are going to love. I welcome you, Rajesh.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for the kind introduction.
So, Rajesh, after 1.5 decade of fast-paced corporate experience, what made you choose the research track?
Yeah, in terms of, I've always been considering in terms of doing a PhD program, but have not been able to, take that particular decision, Hemant. And what I realized is in terms of it's always better to go back to the school and also sharpen your approach from a management perspective and also from a research kind of a perspective. When you're in an organization, you do a lot of interesting stuff, but it's all based on your reading and it is all based on your understanding of the field and not necessarily scientific in nature, which is what a PhD kind of exposes you to, number one. And number two, obviously, I've been teaching over a period of time, but at a later point of time, if I have to set up myself for an interesting teaching career in one of the leading management institutes, then PhD becomes a prerequisite to do that. So these are the two aspects. One is in terms of sharpen your axe by going back to the school and understand in terms of how the research methodologies have evolved over a period of time, and also contribute to some seminal research in the emerging technology space that has been a biggest driver. And the second one is also in terms of if I have to look at a full-fledged career in academics, not now, maybe 10 years
Maybe later,
later,
second inning, yes.
exactly 10 years later, and contribute to the management institute and the management field, PhD is a very good proposition.
So few years ago, when I used to browse stuff, and I used to realize that in Germany there are many tech leaders who have a PhD and then they rise. So when I see that this trend is coming in India, it gives me a very fresh breath and respite that now things are going to be more organized, more structured, and leaders are going to be
Absolutely.
more sharp when they go back to the boardroom from the classroom and switch back. And it also going to help the generations too when they learn from someone who has been on the battlefield, seen everything, and then come back in the classroom. It becomes more practical. That's a great thing. So, Rajesh, when was the time that you realized that now is the time that I can or I should press the button and go for a PhD? Because
Yeah, I've been thinking about over the last 3 years in terms of, over the last 3 years also, I've been working in the emerging technology space, absolutely the latest and greatest in technologies like blockchain and metaverse and cybersecurity space. And when I went and saw in terms of the amount of research that is there in those areas, it's a very, very limited kind of research. So you had mostly the academicians contributing to the body of knowledge rather than the practitioners. And here I'm a practitioner who has been living all these technologies over the last 3 to 5 years. And when I saw that there is a gap wherein academicians are coming and then contributing to this knowledge, but on the other hand, the practitioners contributing to the knowledge was very, very limited.
Limited.
And I thought that there is a unique white space which is available over there, and why don't I go and fill that particular white space which is there, and that's how the thought has arisen, and I've been thinking about over the last 3 years.
Great. So, how did your stint at Tech Mahindra and Quattro prompted you to go back to the school? I mean, any particular incident that you would like to share?
In terms of, as I said again, what happens is in an established technology space or any of the established practice space, you have a lot of reference models, you have a lot of theories, you have a lot of frameworks that have developed over a period of time. But once you are dealing with an emerging technology space, there is a very little a thing that you can refer to. Yeah, you basically, when you're referring to, for example, blockchain, then you refer to some of the people who have contributed to blockchain, the leaders in space like Satoshi Nakamoto or Vitalik Buterin or the others, but they are not applicable directly from a corporate application or from an enterprise application perspective. So how do you look at those kind of models and frameworks, and how do you kind of modify them to the corporate world? And when you look at some established patterns and established frameworks, they're very limited in nature. So that's where, again, as I told you before, that's a good white space to address by bringing in exhaustive research, and contributing to that particular white space is important. And that's how I thought, by virtue of my work that I do at Tech Mahindra, and by virtue of the work that I did at Cohort, there's a lot of experience which is there. How do you package that experience and give it back to the academic world? And that is, again, has been a process of discovery, and that discovery kind of accelerated the decision for PhD.
So, what were your families and peers' reactions to your decision to go back to school and do a PhD?
Yeah, in terms of, my wife says, how much more you will do? You've always been doing it, and aren't you tired of doing this? Because I'd been to Columbia Business School for an executive program in management. Then subsequently, my company sent me to Harvard Business School recently, and there's a lot of things that I get exposed to. And she says, how long will you
How long
study?
will?
In fact, she was telling the other people in the family, this guy has been to Columbia, this guy has been to Harvard. I think maybe Oxford or Cambridge may be the next.
Be the next.
That was the reaction. From my parents' perspective, my dad himself is a PhD in agriculture. So he said, finally, I'm glad that you've
Glad that you are
decided
doing
to
it.
do this and emulate me. It has taken so long for you to emulate me. And the rest of the family members, they were basically saying, where will you create the time? How will you
I will
create the
do that.
time?
Yeah.
Yeah, considering the fact that you have one of the most demanding careers, and on top of that, as it is, there is a very little personal time that you have. Now you're going to stress yourself by this particular decision. Hope you will be able to do well here.
So this reminds me of a very close incident. But one of my friends, he's the same shoes. His father was a PhD in linguistics from University of Columbia, and then he
Right.
came back to India. And this guy went from a bank to again doing a PhD. And then his son, who was in seventh standard, used to say that maybe we will graduate or get convocated in the same year,
Same here.
from
That's
high
correct.
school to the university. Or when you go out of the university, I will go into the university.
Right. Right. See, my thing is, in terms of you should plan at least 10 to 15 years ahead in terms of what you would like to do. And as I told you before, it also gives you a very good platform and a very good foundation to take up something meaningful in the academic world at a later point of time. So all of those things kind of converged, and I thought, there's no point in gauging the depth of swimming pool by sitting outside. At one point of time,
You
you
will have
have
to
to
jump.
jump into
Yeah.
the swimming pool. And that's exactly was the decision-making process.
That's great. So now we dive on to the more specific part of it. So why Mahindra University?
Mahindra University for multiple reasons.
Hmm.
One is in terms of I'm part of the Tech Mahindra
Hmm.
company, which is part of the Mahindra and
Mahindra
Mahindra
conglomerate. Hmm.
group itself. And I've been also following the developments of Mahindra University.
Hmm.
Ultimately, Mahindra University is part and parcel of Tech Mahindra. It was Tech Mahindra's initiative to come up with
Hmm.
a engineering school called Mahindra Ecole,
Ecole.
and then subsequently the entire thing got upgraded from a Mahindra University perspective. So there is a degree of familiarity, number one. And number two, it so happened that a couple of the professors who are there in Mahindra
Hmm.
University, I have a background with them. One of them was my previous boss in the work life,
Hmm.
and another one happened to be MBA graduate from the same university
Oh.
that I went to, which is Sri Sathya Sai Institute of
Hmm.
Higher Learning. So I got an opportunity to speak with them. I met them, and then I got an opportunity to speak with them. I really, since I know them and their background and the kind of stature and the kind of thought leadership or academic leadership that they bring to the table, I thought that it will be fantastic. And that's the second reason from a Mahindra University perspective. The third reason is in terms of, very rarely people get an opportunity to do PhD in their own hometown,
Hometown. Yes.
and that too from an institute which is of repute, right?
Repute.
For example, I went all the way to New York to do Columbia Business School. I went all the way to Boston to
Boston.
do Harvard,
Hmm.
to do program in Harvard Business School.
Hmm.
Here it is like it is right in your backyard.
You're back.
It is your in your hometown, and
Hmm.
it is something which has come from a long-standing group,
Hmm.
a group that has 75 years
Years
of
of
existence in India, which
Hmm.
is the Mahindra Group. So there is all factors were positive. I didn't
Hmm.
see any negative factor per se, and that kind of made me to make the decision in favor of Mahindra University.
So I personally appreciate Mahindra for the kind of legacy. I mean academic staff, the professors. They come from Temple University, Virginia
Exactly.
Tech, Ohio State University. So you have
Exactly.
got the best of the world at one place, which is very close by. That's
Exactly.
perfect. That makes very sense. And for those who are planning to explore a PhD program, Mahindra University is one thing that you should surely explore. I mean, it is nothing. Something you should not miss out on if from your
Absolutely.
social
And
list.
also, there's also one more aspect in terms of creating history, because we are from the first batch of the university.
University.
Very rarely you get an opportunity
Unity,
to
yes.
become part of the first batch
First,
of institute whose name will only be strengthened as we go by, as we go into the future year after year. The
mm,
stature of the institute is only going to grow.
go up.
At that point of time, you can look back and say, hey, what a wonderful opportunity that I've been part of the founding batch of this great institute.
Yes, yes. I mean, my first boss was from the first batch of I'm Ahmedabad PGP. So he used to tell that it's personal pleasure that we were the from the
Exactly.
first bricks that set the alumni thing rolling and
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and it
pleasure.
also becomes a bragging point,
Right.
right? You can
Yeah.
brag about it.
Please share a little bit about your admission experience. I mean, the interaction that you had with them before or during the process.
It was a pretty extensive process
Hmm.
from an admission perspective. You had to fill in your application. You had to give in terms of why do you want to do PhD.
Hmm.
You have to be very clear in terms of the motivating aspects.
Hmm.
Then you had to give references, so
Hmm.
references of people who would matter. So it was a pretty extensive process.
Hmm.
And in a way, it kind of, I haven't done any application of that particular nature, at least in the last 10
10
years.
years.
Or in 8 years. Columbia, I went to Columbia Business
Hmm.
School in 2014, which was a very exhaustive application
Hmm.
process. You had to write your statement of purpose. Why
Hmm.
do you want to do?
Great.
What do you want to contribute? What is your aspiration from an academic perspective and from
Hmm.
a professional perspective? perspective. It was more importance was given from a professional perspective rather than academic perspective, and how Columbia degree will contribute to you to achieve that professional aspirations. Obviously, they don't want to select a wrong person, right? And I saw the same kind of exhaustiveness
And
in
the
an
rigor here.
application process which was there. Here they wanted to ensure that they get absolutely the good
Good people.
candidates into the program, because it's a founding program. It's a year one. I mean, it's a program. It's a debut program for them, and then so application process was so comprehensive to ensure that they give justice to various people who apply, and they kind of select the best
The
that
kids.
is possible.
So, please tell us about your cohort and fellow scholars.
Yeah, the cohort is quite a diverse set of
Hmm.
people. We have people from different backgrounds of profession, and also we have people who've been entrepreneurs. So we have one entrepreneur in the class. Then there's also diversity. There are two female PhD candidates in the class. So from that perspective, there is diversity, and these people have been entrepreneurs themselves. One of them have been an entrepreneur, and another one has been in the learning and development space, working with organizations of repute like Infosys and ISB, Indian School of Business. Then from the rest of people, one of them is my current colleague itself from Tech Mahindra, who brings in several years of experience in the engineering space and in managing large construction projects, infrastructure projects. Uh, then, uh, then there's one more person who is an entrepreneur himself in the advertising space, basically in the outdoor advertising space. So you have two entrepreneurs in the tech space. You have a person who has done L&D. You have and then there are in fact two people from the education background. One currently working with ISB, and another one has been working with ISB before. He has the unique distinction of starting the executive programs at ISB before joining Mahindra University and before becoming the part of the class. So you have about 7 to 8 people who bring in a diverse set of experiences, diverse set of accomplishments, and diverse set of backgrounds. So it's a fantastic cohort, I must say.
I have rarely heard about such a diverse and robust cohort at any other business school.
Right. Added to that, we have one individual who has just completed his MBA. Is the youngest person in the class, and he's decided to do a full-time PhD after completing a MBA. So you have a good mix of old and young people in the cohort.
Okay. So, how has been your experience so far, especially uh, the feeling of going back to the classroom and then going back to the boardroom, and how has it been going?
Yeah, in terms of when I look at the curriculum and when I look at the teaching methodologies, and when I look at in terms of the approach to the entire program, I haven't seen anything which is of a lower quality compared to Columbia Business School or a Harvard Business School. I can say that because I've been exposed to the programs over there. And as you rightly alluded to before, most of the professors are extremely accomplished and extremely experienced, right? So you have Professor Rama, who is the dean of the School of Management, brings in many years of experience of teaching in various international schools, Ivy League schools in different parts of the world. You have Professor Srini, who did his PhD from Indian School of Business, from the first batch of the executive PhD program, and he also brings in several years of corporate experience. Then you have Professor Pradeep Rachal,
Bachirla,
who
yes.
is from the Templeton
Temple.
University, and then he's been exposed to PhD programs in different parts of the world, and he is also has the unique distinction of guiding a number of PhD students in different parts of the world. Then you have Professor Nilanjan, who
Nilanjan
has
Panak.
worked with Bibek Debroy before, and he brings in an extensive experience. He is also has done his PhD abroad. So
Oh,
you have
abroad.
many people who have done their PhD program in different parts of the world, and they bring in the best of the knowledge over there and package it together to people like us who are in the cohort.
Cohort.
So from that particular perspective, whichever benchmark I apply, it happens to be absolutely top in the world, the best in the industry, and best in the educational world. Since it's the first program, I'm 100% sure as we go along, it
Yes.
will come up as the most preferred program, not only in India but also in different parts of
Parts
the
of the
world.
world. So how has your routine changed after joining the course?
The routine has changed in terms of there's a lot of classwork that gets given, though we don't, go to the regular classes, but there's a lot of classwork that gets shared with us. It's basically the way the program is designed is you have 3 classes over the course of 1 month, and then you get exposed to a lot of class material, a
Readings,
lot of
papers.
assignments, lot of reading material. So it is good in terms of one way. It is good. For example, in strategy, I was reading about a particular kind of strategic approach, which I already started using for my sphere at my sphere of work for whatever I do and whatever approach I take. So it is good. It's refreshing. It is going to bring in a completely newer perspective. Earlier you had an option of reading all those articles, but you kind of inertia, or you would have said, okay, let me create time. But now you cannot say inertia and lack of time. You have to, by force,
By
you have
force.
to read those. And once you read those, then you will realize, wow, these are so thought provoking,
Not
and these are really helpful to what you do at work. So, in essence, it has become a busy schedule has become a lot more busier and a little more disciplined. Now you create maybe an hour or few hours, if not on a daily basis, but few hours on a weekly
weekly
basis,
basis.
where you focus in terms of completion of the classwork and completion of the assignments.
So, how did you prepare for getting an admit into the course? Any personal preparation tips and references material that you would like to share?
Yeah, in terms of since it is for primarily for people who are experienced, what is more important is to package your experience in a convincing and an effective manner. So when you're going to the interview, what is more important is the people are looking at not your capability and credentials. They're more looking at is in terms of how are you going to do justice to this particular program. Will you be able to carve out time, and what are your aspirations primarily? If you're clear in terms of communicating your aspirations, and when you communicate your aspirations, the passion easily comes through.
Comes
And
through.
when the interview panel sees that, yeah, this guy has got pretty good aspirations and his passion is really good, and when they kind of assess that the passion is good, they will get confidence that he or she will be able to create the time and make it happening, right, or
and
make it
and
a
and
reality.
stay in it for a longer run because it's going to
Exactly,
take time.
exactly. Are you in here for a short haul, or are
A
you
long
in
run.
here for a long haul? Unlike the other academic programs where executives do, whether those programs are either for 3 months, 6 months, 1 month.
They're time
Very
bound.
hardly, very rarely, it goes into a duration of 3 years, and PhD can be at the minimum 3 years and the
Minimum
maximum of even
even
5 years,
5 years.
right? So commitment is important. And even when I went for the interview, the dean of the school said he always gets motivated by people, especially senior executives who are fairly successful in their domain, but still come to the school to
School.
learn more. That kind of motivates the dean, and that becomes a brownie point in the application process. But more important is how do you communicate your aspiration, how do you harness what you have done over a period of time, and harness that as an advantage to the program, and communicating that becomes a lot more important.
So I have also interacted with Professor Velamuri, and I agree with you 200% that his enthusiasm is contagious, and his eye for the
Detail.
scholarly acumen is very, very keen. I mean,
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
so any productivity hack for the aspiring scholars that you learned the hard way or that you have tried and worked very well for you?
Yeah, in terms of you don't treat it as something that you're doing differently from what you're doing at work.
Hmm.
The best way to manage both easily is to identify topics that are very relevant to your experience and that are very relevant to your work. And moment you bring in that kind of integration, then what you're doing is not completely different, right? It is not isolated
Hmm.
from what you're doing. It is not alienated from what you're doing. It is completely integrated in nature. And some of the things, obviously, you will have a challenge in terms of looking at some of the components like statistics and some
Hmm.
of the components like econometrics.
Hmm.
uh, these are being taught by Professor Muni. He himself is a very well experienced professor who comes from JPMC background. Then he did his PhD in a reputed institute in Chennai, and then he got into the teaching world. So some of those components which are there, which you might have forgotten, you
Hmm.
might have studied that in the MBA program, or if you're someone who has done something in the statistics or in the Six Sigma space, you may have been in touch with it. But if you're not that, then you have to
Re-
restart all of
Restart
that again.
everything.
Yeah, those things will be a little difficult. It will
Hmm.
require a patience. More than patience, it will require a mental adjustment. You
Hmm.
should be ready to do that once again. What you have done 10, 15 years ago, you should be ready to do
Yes.
that again. If you're able to manage that component well, in addition to looking at overall approach to the PhD program as an integrated approach as part of your career, then
Hmm.
you will get it very easily.
And
But if you
both the,
don't approach it in that particular manner, it will always look alien to you.
and that way both the boardroom and the classroom thing goes up, top notch up, because
Exactly.
one thing reinforces the other one. Great.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
so, as per your experience, what qualities does an interviewers look for when they want to recruit a PhD candidate? So, I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
shared that drive, motivation, and the long haul thinking. Anything else
exactly.
that additional?
Yeah, and also in terms of how continuously and consistently you're motivated to contribute something new in this
Hmm.
particular field, right? That is what is important. Are you contributing to the existing body of knowledge? Are you contributing to the enhancement of that particular body of knowledge? You can do PhD by contributing to the existing body of knowledge. There are
Hmm.
many institutes, many universities which will enable that. But I think the Mahindra University is not just looking at contributing to existing body of knowledge, but
But ex-
contributing to the expansion of that
expansion of the
body
body
of
of knowledge.
knowledge. And that's where it becomes very important, whether you have that kind of acumen,
Hmm.
and whether you have that kind of more than acumen. First is the aptitude and attitude. And once the aptitude and attitude comes, then obviously the acumen and the patience develops to contribute. I think that is what they were looking. Any institute which is of repute will
Hmm.
look for these components, and Mahindra University was no different in those areas.
Now, why should one consider enrolling for a PhD program? Now, this is especially for people who are just sitting on the fence and waiting for the right time to jump in into the PhD thing. So,
I've,
why?
I've Exactly. I have had many conversations with people who have been considering about it but not taking the plunge,
Lunch.
because at times they become very, very clinical in their approach,
Mm.
saying, I want to do only in this particular area.
Mm.
I want to contribute to a broader area and all that stuff. PhD is not like that. PhD is about being very specific,
Mm.
being very very focused. Yeah, you want to contribute to that broader knowledge base. You can always do that after completion of
Mm.
PhD. So one is in terms of the way they approach. Because of their approach, they're still as the fence. They still are in the fence sitting area, and they are not taking that particular plunge. That's number one. And number two, sometimes you don't have to over analyze. But the
Mm.
problem is, once you start over analyzing, you will never make decisions.
Right.
Sometimes you have to contain that analysis piece and then say, hey, here is the right time. So you will have to look for cues, right? Or the clues, as I mentioned before. I mentioned saying that it's in the same town as you are in. It's a university of repute.
Mm.
People have pretty good experience. They have done it themselves through a
Mm.
hard process, through a rigor. And
Mm.
when you're getting best of this, there's no point in fence sitting. You just take the plunge. My example of the swimming pool.
Mm.
You cannot learn
Learn
swimming
swimming by just sitting on
by
it.
going to the pool every day and not jumping into the pool.
So, I mean, we interviewed professors from Mahindra University last month, and I realized that there are people who can guide every kind of scholar who aspires to go for the PhD journey, because there are entrepreneurs, there are tech leaders, there are leaders, there are people who have started their own small units, consulting practices, and then went back to the school, and then came contributed something, and then came back to the school, and
Right.
they're still contributing. So I agreed with you that if you get such a package very close by, and if you are waiting for it, if you're mentally ready but not making a decision, then you are doing injustice to yourself.
Exactly, exactly. Procrastination doesn't help. Just you can procrastinate, delay the decision, because sometimes people tend to become too idealistic. Number one, number two, they overanalyze,
Mm.
and number three, they underestimate their ability to do something of this nature. So stop procrastinating, stop overanalyzing, and believe in yourself, and then go ahead and take that decision.
Great. So now let's play a small game called Rapid Fire. An early morning ritual or practice.
Early morning ritual or practice, I do Surya Namaskars and then I do Sudarshan Kriya.
Mm.
That I do consistently. I wouldn't say I will do every day, but I will do at least 3 to 4 times in a week.
A must-have item on your office desk.
Must have item on my office desk is a notepad and a pen. Because whenever idea comes, I write it down, or I have my to-do lists always. So these are the two things which are always there. And then obviously a bottle of water. When
Mm.
you're working so hard, you tend to be underhydrated. So a bottle of water, a notepad, and a pen.
A pen. So do you use a watch, or do you access your cell phone to keep track of time?
Yeah, in terms of, obviously, I do watch use watch to a great
Mm.
extent, especially the Apple Watch. I'm kind of, people in my home tell me that I'm kind of, addicted to
Addicted.
it. It's not just referring to it; it's kind of getting addiction to the watch, because it's such a productive tool. It'll
Mm.
help you to manage a number of things, not only time but also in terms of whether you're sedentary or not sedentary.
Mm.
It tells you that you've been sitting for a long period of time to get up and then take a small walk around and stuff like that, and also gives you a good insight into the amount of activity that you have done for the day, especially amount of states you have climbed and all that stuff. So in a way, I'm addicted to it.
Great. So I had a professor who used to work in US, and then he used to go for runs every other day and all those things. I used to ask him, how do you make time? So he
Yeah,
would say that the kind of field I am in, I'm going to get paid in the longer run, not in the shorter term. So I need to live longer and do more in the last 20 years of my active life, rather
right.
than everything else is just a preparation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what do you do when you feel stressed or overwhelmed?
Stressed, overwhelmed is to just pause that particular activity,
Mhm.
and then probably close eyes and think about for a minute or two, or reassure yourself saying that it's okay, slow down,
Mhm.
and then take a deep breath and then get back.
So what is your latest purchase to increase your productivity?
Latest purchase, I didn't purchase, but when I was in US about 2 weeks ago, I had a colleague who was using a foldable Bluetooth keypad,
Mhm.
wherein you can just place your phone on that foldable
Oh.
Bluetooth keypad, and then you can start typing notes. So I looked at it and then I said, "Hey, this is fantastic. Where can I get one from?" He was too generous to gift that to me, and then I use that extensively when I'm traveling. When I'm on a flight, I open the flight tray and then put the phone. No need to pull out a computer or a tablet from your bag. You just place the phone on top of that, and then it becomes a blue. You just connect to the keyboard by Bluetooth, and then
You're good to go.
you're in business.
Yes. Uh, what is your favorite unwinding activity? I mean, do you read, do you go for a run, and what it is that you do?
Multiple
Mm,
walk, run.
mm,
These two are favorite unwinding activities. I used to do cycling a lot before pandemic, but
mm,
after pandemic, I discontinued and kind of replaced that physical activity with Surya Namaskar and Sudarshan Kriya.
mhm.
That is what I do. But regularly go for a walk, and when I have time and when the itch is there, I definitely go for a run.
Your favorite book?
Favorite book, not one book. It
Mm,
kind of changes from time to time. I have read many books. It's very difficult to call out in terms of which is my favorite book. Now that I have also authored
mm.
couple of books on blockchain, I would consider them as my favorite
Good.
books, because a lot of effort
Has
and
gone into them.
thinking has gone into writing those books. So why refer to someone else's book as a favorite book? My own book authored by me are my favorite books.
So, what are you currently reading?
uh, PhD material,
Oh,
class material.
last minute.
No time to read
Good.
anything else than that.
Your favorite movie or Netflix?
Favorite
Yeah.
movie on Netflix? Again, a number of movies come to the fore. Something that I have watched recently on
Mm,
Netflix when I was in the flight is about this quarterback, a person in American football.
mhm,
His name is Kurt, who goes on to become the most valuable player in the history of American football. So it's a very interesting movie. A guy, is a normal guy. As a kid, he watched some of the greatest NFL players. He
mhm,
tried to become most. I mean, he tries to get into the game, but never been successful. But he never gives up that purpose and never gives up that focus. In interim, he goes and takes up a job as a store clerk in a grocery store, but
mhm.
still keeps dreaming about it. And then eventually, he doesn't give up trying, and then eventually uh, makes it big as the most valuable
Good
player
player.
in American football. That's a very interesting movie. But if you talk about combination of fiction
Mhm.
and story writing, I have watched as recent as yesterday night. I watched Ponniyin Selvan one.
Oh,
Ponniyin Selvan one.
yeah, the Mani Ratnam epic
Yeah, that's correct. Magnum opus.
magnum opus. So, your favorite quote that keeps you going?
Favorite quote, which is what I obviously my motto is, help ever, hurt never. This
Mm.
is what I had
The,
picked up from,
the cover
yeah,
image is getting it.
exactly, from my MBA college from Sri Sathya Sai Baba. That's number one. And number two, the other one that I picked up from my professor in Columbia Business School
Mm.
was uh, the cave you feared to enter holds the treasure you seek.
Treasure you see. Great. So, one last question, which is not in the rooster. How would you like to be remembered?
Someone who helped demystify these emerging technologies, understand technologies in a simple manner, make them relevant for their professional and personal lives. And someone who has contributed a lot of sensible and simple stuff in this particular area.
That's great. I mean, it was a glide interviewing you, and I mean, it didn't seem like an interview, to be very candid, for me at least. It was like meeting a very, very old friend after such a long time because it was in a flow. It was Mr. Rajesh Dhuddu, a tech leader, a TEDx speaker, an author, and a major contributor in the blockchain space in India, and a research scholar with Mahindra University School of Management. He wears many hats and he wears them flawlessly. It was nice interacting with you,
Thank
Rajesh.
you. Pleasure is mine, Hemant. Greatly appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully, whatever I shared becomes valuable and helpful to people. And I'm always accessible. If somebody wants to know more, they may feel free to reach out to me either directly or on LinkedIn or on Twitter, whatever channel they would like to use. I'm accessible and more than available to help them in their decision-making process.
Thanks a lot. That's so nice of you, Rajesh.
It's great to see you all here. Thank you for watching our work. If you have not subscribed to Inkpot Hub Media, then please hit the bell icon and subscribe to our channel and support research celebrations in India.